In the final, uncertain days of the War of 1812, the young United States stood at a crossroads of destiny. The British Empire, the most powerful military force on earth, sought one final blow: to seize New Orleans, the jewel of the South, and cut the heart of America in two. New Orleans was more than a city. It was the lifeline of trade, the gateway to the Mississippi River, and the artery that carried the nation's spirit. The British plan was simple but devastating: take the port, control the river, and strangle America's growing independence. But standing between them and total victory was a man whose will was harder than iron. General Andrew Jackson, known as Old Hickory. Jackson's army was no polished professional force. It was a patchwork of brave souls: U.S. regulars, Tennessee and Kentucky militiamen, frontiersmen, freed African Americans, Choctaw warriors, and even pirates under the legendary Jean Lafitte. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. But they had one thing the British didn't: a burning will to defend their homeland. As word of the approaching British fleet spread, Jackson acted with lightning speed. He ordered the fortification of New Orleans, digging trenches along the Rodriguez Canal and placing cannons to guard every approach. The soldiers worked through mud and rain, hungry, cold, and weary, but Jackson's voice drove them forward. "By the Eternal," he thundered, "they shall not sleep on our soil." His courage was contagious. On January 8, 1815, the morning broke with a heavy fog blanketing the Louisiana swamps. In the eerie stillness, American soldiers waited behind their defenses, silent, tense, hearts pounding. Then came the faint sound of drums. Through the mist, dark figures began to emerge: the British redcoats, marching in perfect formation, their bayonets glinting in the dim light. The Americans waited until the enemy drew close, then unleashed thunder. Cannons roared, rifles cracked, and the fog exploded into chaos. The British ranks were torn apart by iron and lead, yet they pressed on, climbing over the bodies of their fallen comrades, determined to break through. But Jackson's men, farmers, hunters, pirates, and patriots, stood unshaken. Their aim was true, their will unbroken. General Pakenham, the British commander, rode boldly into the inferno, urging his troops forward, but fate struck him down amid the smoke. Leaderless and broken, the British charge faltered. Within 30 minutes, the mightiest army on earth was shattered. Over 2,000 British soldiers lay dead or wounded, while the Americans suffered fewer than 100 casualties. It was one of the most lopsided victories in history. Yet the irony was profound. The war was already over. Weeks earlier, across the Atlantic, the Treaty of Ghent had been signed, ending hostilities. But news traveled slow across oceans, and so this final battle, fought in ignorance of peace, became America's most glorious triumph. For the young nation, the Battle of New Orleans became a symbol of unity, courage, and destiny fulfilled. It proved that freedom, once earned, could be defended against any empire. Andrew Jackson became a national hero, his name etched forever into American legend. Across New Orleans, church bells rang, flags waved, and people danced in the streets, not merely for victory, but for survival. The muddy fields that once ran red with blood became sacred ground, where the courage of ordinary men preserved the promise of liberty. The echoes of cannon fire faded, but the story lived on, carried down the Mississippi like a proud song of independence. From the swamps of Louisiana rose a new confidence, a belief that this young nation, forged in struggle and defiance, could stand tall among empires. The Battle of New Orleans was more than a military victory. It was the moment America found its strength, its unity, and its voice. And in that moment, against impossible odds, the dream of freedom did not just survive, it triumphed.